Right. Yes, it's live now.
So greetings from the Boston Global Forum. I'm Tom Patterson. I'm co-founder of BGF, along with Governor Michael Dukakis, Tuan Nguyen, and John Quelch. And I'm sitting in my office at Harvard University, where I'm the Bradley Professor of Government and the Press, and currently also the director of the Shorenstein Center on Media, Politics, and Public Policy. This is another in BGF's series of online dialogues that began some weeks ago with a talk by David Sanger, who's the chief Washington correspondent for the New York Times. And today I'm joined by Mr. Yasuhisa Kawamura, who is Japan's Director General for Press and Public Diplomacy. Mr. Kawamura, thank you for joining us. And let me first express my sympathy for the tragic earthquake in the Kyushu region a few days ago. An unthinkable tragedy.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the kind invitation to such a renowned forum, Boston Global Forum. I'm very honored to be here with the participants. And first of all, you asked about the condition of the Kyushu earthquake. Thanks very much, first of all, for the very heartwarming sympathy and messages. But actually, the Japanese government is now exerting the best efforts to help the people who are trapped in the soil, and at the same time, we set up the refugee houses, temporary houses for the people who evacuated from their own homes. Currently, approximately 100,000 people were left home and stayed in the government open the temporary houses. Public utilities are shut off, but at a rapid rate now recovering over the past several hours of work this side. Airport of Kumamoto will be open for commercial flights from tomorrow morning. But thanks for the offer from the United States government. Today, we started the airlift by the U.S. Air Force. They're now transporting the life-safe goods and water, food, and blankets to the sites. We really appreciate the kind offer from the United States. So we're doing our best to help the needy in the Kyushu regions. Especially we're providing the food, water, blanket, and shelter to the most needy. And at the same time, we're doing our best to restore the services of public utilities to the people.
Yeah. Well, again, we wish you the best in this tragic circumstance. Next month, Japan will be hosting the G7 summit. What issues do you think will dominate that summit?
Okay, the G7 summit meeting will be held in Japan on May 26th and 27th. The region is called the Iseshima. I think it takes about 2.5 hours from Tokyo. It's a beautiful sea resort region. And in 8 years' absence, we host the summit meeting of the G7 leaders. So we are now spelling out the possible discussion items for leaders. First of all, we have underlined that the value of a G7 summit leaders meeting. It just reminds me of the last year's Germany Chairman Elmao summit meeting. At the beginning of the summit meeting of last year, Prime Minister Abe said, by looking over the past 40 years of the G7 summit meeting, what is the meaning for G7 in contemporary international affairs? Prime Minister Abe said that if we look over the 40 years of history, we gathered here as the countries of combined, tied with the common fundamental values, including freedom of speech, democracy, free economy, and the rule of law. So those fundamental values combine those G7 leaders. So this is fundamental philosophy, which would also be relevant for the upcoming G7 summit meeting in Ise Shima in May. So if you look around today's international security situations, the whole world has received the challenges from the terrorists and the extreme violent activists, and the attempts to change the status quo through force. So in other words, that the world is facing the challenge of the international order, which is built upon the fundamental values of the rule of law and such a human rights values. So the G7 summit meeting will deal with those imminent challenges from the international community. And prior to the summit meeting, quite recently in Hiroshima, Japan, G7 foreign ministers meeting was held. Japan was the chair. And in political and security field, the G7 foreign ministers discussed the imminent challenges, notably North Korea maritime security, and Russia, Ukraine, and so forth. So based upon this discussion of the G7 foreign ministers meeting, I think on the security areas, the summit leaders will discuss, extend based upon the achievement made by the foreign ministers. I'll touch upon those subjects a little bit later. And also the G7 traditionally developed as the forum of discussing the world economy, or the house of coordinating economic policies. So under the decelerating economies, mainly through China and other emerging economies, so the future prospect of the world economy is increasing, becoming unclear. So Japan as chair would like to seek that the G7 summit would issue a positive policy message to the world. Climate change and energy would be another important topic for leaders to discuss. As you may recall, the Paris Agreement at the COP21 meeting last year made a good achievement. So G7 summit meeting in Ise Shima will be the opportunity for leaders to discuss that the world as a whole should take for the prevention of the global warming based upon the achievement of the Paris goal. Japan did make a substantial contribution to the successful conclusion of the COP21 in Paris by pledging an increased 1.3 trillion yen to the development fund for the developing countries. And the issue of development is also a possible topic to discuss. Coincidentally, the G7 Ise Shima will be the first opportunity for leaders to exchange views on the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030, which was adopted at the UN General Assembly last year. Japan underlines the global partnership involving all partners, including private and NPOs, and especially in the context of the development, and more specifically, the SDGs. I think all partners, including NGOs, should be encouraged to discuss the issues. And in practice of the G7 Leaders Summit meeting, the hosting chair country could underline a couple of focal issues. In case of Japan summit in Ise-Shima, there are three. One is the health issue. The leaders will consider the issues including strengthening the response to public health emergencies by taking into the lessons learned from the previous outbreaks, such as Ebola. In addition, they will also discuss ensuring the provisions of lifelong health care services from maternal, newborn, and child health through non-communicable diseases and aging in the pursuit of universal health coverage. And a quality infrastructure investment will be the second item to be discussed with the Japan presidency. There's a global demand-supply gap in infrastructure investment. But according to the World Bank, the gap reaches $1 trillion a year. So quality, reliable, endurable, and environmentally friendly infrastructure building will be key for sustainable development of Asia, Africa, and other part of the world. But this concept of the quality infrastructure goes beyond a short-term quantitative view. So Prime Minister Abe, in this regard, announced the Partnership for Quality Infrastructure last May. At the Ise-Shima Summit, leaders will communicate the importance of quality infrastructure investment and will discuss the possible contributions by the G7. And the last issue for under the Japan presidency with a special focus will be women. Japan has been working towards a society where women are actively engaged. As part of this initiative, Japan has been hosting the World Assembly for Women, so-called WOW, W-A-W, since 2 years ago, inviting the international leaders to join discussions on issues surrounding women. So following Elmau Summit last year, the G7 this time will focus with some specific relevance to women on the agenda. So those are the crux of the overview of the prospect of the G7 Ise-Shima Summit. If you need, I'd like to add some of the achievement made by the G7 foreign ministers meeting in Hiroshima last week. So North Korea, for example, foreign ministers condemned the nuclear tests and the missiles launches, demanded the DPRK not engage in any further provocative actions, urged North Korea to address human rights concerns, including the abduction issue. But in North Korean issue, I may need to add the recent excellent collaboration among the Japan, the United States, and South Korea. In the fringe of nuclear security summit meeting in Washington, D.C. at the end of last month, 3 leaders demonstrated strong solidarity against North Korea's repeated provocative actions and agreed to intensify even closer communication among foreign and defense authorities. And tomorrow, on the 19th, those three countries, undersecretaries of foreign office, will gather in Seoul to follow up the three leaders' agreement in Washington, D.C. last week. And maritime security was also one of the main items discussed among the G7 foreign ministers in Hiroshima. And foreign ministers are concerned about the situation in the East and South China Sea, emphasized the importance of a peaceful settlement of disputes, and expressed strong opposition to any unilateral actions that could alter the status quo and increase tensions jointly. So they share the concern over such a unilateral attempts, and they agree to oppose any such actions.
Good, thank you.
Those are the main topics to be picked up by the leaders in Ise-Shima.
Thank you. Over the last year, the Boston Global Forum has been trying to promote the issue of cybersecurity, and recently provided the government of Japan some recommendations in that area. And I'm wondering whether you think cybersecurity will be an issue at the G7 summit.
Well, the final announcement of the topics to be discussed by the leaders will be made in coming weeks. But I think it is most possible for leaders to discuss this issue of cybersecurity. On cybersecurity issue, as you may know, the Japanese and the United States governments have been conducted a series of discussions. And we'll continue to such a discussion, and probably towards the goal of discussion of to emphasize the importance of the rule of law. The rule of law should be applied to the cybersecurity arrangement. I expect that in coming weeks that the items to be discussed will be much clearer sense. But I hope that, yes, that the leaders will discuss this.
What do you think the prospects are of getting China, Russia to agree to some international norms about cybersecurity?
Well, I think the G7 forum, G7 is the forum, a place where the leaders of 7 countries, as I said before, those countries are representative of the fundamental values. So I think that from this perspective, the decision and discussions provide a guiding principle for the international community to follow. So I guess that at the end of the day, the G7 will make a very meaningful message to the world.
So you've already made reference to the increasingly difficult situation in your area with North Korea continuing its nuclear path, and China becoming increasingly aggressive in the East China Sea and the South China Sea. What's the Japanese government's position on building up its own defense capacity, given what's happening in the region?
Japan has been doing fulfilling its kind of responsibility in defending the Japanese national interest. But as you know, the security environment in the Northeast and Pacific regions posing more difficulties for any country in the region. So I would say that any country in the region cannot do effectively to meet with these challenges in the area alone. So collaboration, cooperation, coordination, those are required. And I think in this regard, last year, Japan passed new legislation on security and peace. And in accordance with this legislation, Japan and the United States also agreed to formulate new defense guidelines. We also provide the capacity building for the Asian countries to deal with their ocean issues. We coordinate policies with our partners in Asia and the Pacific regions so frequently. So all those things considered, we try to seek the increased deterrence against such a security challenges, and we are making very meaningful steps forward last year.
Now, do you see any danger in Japan's traditional, traditional reliance on the U.S. for its defense? Do you foresee some continuing development of Japan's continuing defense capacity?
Well, I think, as I said before, that we will do our own efforts to deal with the security challenges. But at the same time, we continue to, more than ever, to work closely with the ally United States to meet with the newly emerging challenges. As I said in the beginning, that the security environment surrounding Japan in the Pacific area is more or increasing the difficulties. So we need effective, efficient collaboration in this regard.
So let's shift to, if we could, to some economic issues. Japan is a party to the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, and as you know, the TPP increasingly looks in trouble in the United States. Several of the Republican presidential candidates have come out against it, and so have the two Democratic candidates, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And what would be the implications for Japan if the United States, if the Congress here should refuse to agree to the TPP?
Well, again, for we know through the press reports that the TPP was kind of the focus among the U.S. presidential candidates in campaigns and and their remarks. But as from Japan, that we cannot make comments on what those U.S. presidential candidates are referring to the TPP. Japan on its own capacity, as Prime Minister Abe said, he would pursue his own kind of mandate that he would do his best to pass the TPP legislation in the Japanese Diet. Actually, he submitted the bill to the Diet on March 8th, and the bill is under consideration among the Diet members now, and we hope that it will go through accordingly. And I think that the same thing for the United States will also consider the right treatment of the TPP.
Now, do you think strengthening economic ties to China could be one of the ways to go forward and reducing some tensions in the region?
Well, China is now Japan's biggest trading partner.
Right.
and the huge amount of Japanese overseas investments directed to China. So China is Japan's very important economic partner. And so I hope that this relationship will continue to grow. And Japanese companies in China employ hundred thousands of people, local people. So it contributed to the local economy. Chinese tourists come to Japan in a massive way. So the Japanese the economy is also welcoming those people for purchase of Japanese commodities. They also enjoy a quality of service and quality of air. And so it's a very interactive and positive contributive elements. So there's no question about it. But having said that, you mentioned that the security issue between the two countries. Well, in the East China Sea and South China Seas, the unilateral attempts to still going on, and we are witnessing some changes in the approach to the East China Sea regions. So I think we need to deal with this anyway. But having said that, economic sound development is, of course, is definitely necessary.
But I'm wondering about how much leverage you're getting from your economic relations, given China's recent actions. They don't seem to be much of a deterrent, at least in some of the policies it's pursuing. And of course, China has a lot of trade relations with Vietnam as well, and yet you see its actions in the South China Sea. So I'm just wondering kind of where the economic factor plays into the relationships there, and to what degree it actually translates into a source of leverage in dealing with these more troublesome issues.
Well, if you see the China-Japan relationship, I think we have to think of those two countries are the second and third largest economies in the world. So we have many interfaces. These relations between our two countries are not so single, black and white, or good or bad. But we see such a bilateral relationship in a long-term historic viewpoint. We communicated, we traded over 1,000 years. But contemporary Japan-China relations should be structured from the summit leaders' relationship and the more pragmatic interactions. So if you look over the past 3 years, well, we had the tension around 2012, and then following year in 2013, Japan and China successfully concluded a summit meeting between Prime Minister Abe and President Xi Jinping in Beijing in context of the IPEF. So they agreed the fundamental code of conduct, which is called the mutually beneficial relationship based upon common strategic interest. So since then, Prime Minister Abe and President Xi Jinping met in twice in the format of the summit meeting. And the Prime Minister Abe and Prime Minister Li Keqiang also met a couple of times. So each respective occasion of those two top leaders discussed, they reconfirmed that they are on the engagement for improving their fundamental relationship. So actually, you have witnessed a series of improvement in communications and the authorities discussions, and they agreed last year, for example, a series of things. One of them is the mutual visits by foreign ministers, economic high-level discussions, and the consultations in the East China Sea on the issue of the resource development and others. So we have seen actual and physical improvement and smoother communication so far. So we'll take step by step for further improvement. Along with these efforts on both sides, well, of course, the economic relations should be followed. And at the same time, the political youngsters exchanges are, of course, should be encouraged.
Right. So, all of the advanced industrialized nations are dealing with kind of an aging population and a declining birth rate problem. The population's getting older, fewer workers. The United States has dealt with that issue in many ways through its immigration policies. And so the United States has a relatively young population relative to other advanced industrialized nations. I know Japan is dealing with the issue of an aging population. What kind of policies do you envision in that area?
Frankly, I'm not an expert on the immigration policy or population growth policy. But for we have economic agreement with other countries, and we have a policy of the welcome, receive the foreign skilled labor force to supplement, help our to keep our advantage, and also to help the social needs. So along with those basic policy line that we receive the foreign workforce. But if you say that we should differentiate the refugee issues and the immigration policy issue. But I think your question is about the immigration policy issue. So we have certain criteria that the skillful labor forces they have basic stance. But of course, on different aspects of the front, we may have some concrete proposals in these areas.
So, Mr. Kawamura, in closing, let me ask you two very broad questions, and you can take this wherever you would like to take it. So, what are Japan's largest worries for the future? What are its major hopes?
Your first question is what are the Japanese most
what are your principal worries looking ahead, looking to the future? What are your major hopes?
Okay. I think you should ask the question to the Prime Minister, but what is the fear? Frankly speaking, now the whole attention of the Japanese government, I mean, concurrently on the rescue of the people in the Kyushu devastated area because of the earthquake. There might be another series of aftershocks in the area. And there are also missing people and devastated houses and the water supply, electricity, and so forth. So we are now doing our best to help them restore the public utility services to them. This is a very immediate future issue for us. But the midterm future, issue. Of course, the security and the peace challenges, terrorism challenges, as well as the security challenges in Northeast Asia are the biggest issues for us. So we're now dealing with those ones. In upcoming G7 summit meeting, we'll deal with it. And also in bilateral context, US, the United States continues to be the most important ally for us. And we'll continue to discuss it, collaborate with it to deal with this. Long-time future, the economic vitality, and will the Prime Minister have the goal of the GDP, the 500 trillion yen by 2020, and the birth rate 1.8 per couple. So such a viable, the very active and competitive Japanese society, community, and economic might be the goal. And we're surely to attain this goal by implementing all the necessary measures.
Mr. Kawamura, thank you very much. Mr. Kawamura is the Japan's Director General for Press and Public Diplomacy, and he's joined us today for the Boston Global Forum online series of dialogues. I'm Tom Patterson from the Boston Global Forum. Thank you for being with us today. And Mr. Kawamura, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Right. Thank you very much.